everything this week seems to be about the white working class. A lot of conversations on mainstream media, particularly, I guess it's because of West Virginia, right? And there's really no clear cut definition that I found of the white working class, other than the most consistent theme is people who are not white people who are not college educated, who are generally poor, who now that's pretty standard across most definitions of the white working class. And then you have the extension of that, which is the assumption that they're generally racist, sexist, misogynist. Well, I guess that's the some equivalencies there. Homophobic, overly religious. Basically, in many ways, they're seen as the scourge of America. And yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, we'll talk about them a little bit more. Particularly, I don't want to. I'm not going to. If you know anything about me, I don't. I do my very best not to just go with standard tropes. I don't want to go with just the general narrative that other people are pushing, because it does me and no good for me to regurgitate. What everyone else is talking about. So in particular, I want to talk about the use of the white working class as a means of attacking the economic populist message. That's what I'm going to talk about tonight. If you listen closely, there's always a theme for the week, right? And that theme has been circulating around the white working class. It's something that everyone talks about on the news right now, and it's really on the narrative of the week because of West Virginia. And it's like this assumption that because West Virginia does have a historical reputation of poor white people. And so I guess they're just that's the reason for the conversation. But I've been quiet on it all this week because I've just been sitting on it and trying to unpack in my mind what they're trying to do with this narrative. Because I want you to be sure this narrative is being pushed, or a narrative is being pushed by the Democratic establishment about the white working class, particularly one that they want to part ways completely with the white working class. Now, Hillary Clinton is, of course, never going to say this, but her actions actually communicate this, as well as her surrogates and her minions and her legion. They communicate this, and there's this open, blatant conversation now that's happening from white liberal elites and from black liberal elites that is completely and wholly dismissive of the white working class. Now, as I started to talk about before we talked to Alex, there's not really a true definition of the white working class, except for one consistent theme, which is they're uneducated, or at least they're not college educated. They're generally in poverty or at the very bottom economically of the middle class. And then there's some generalizations that are made about them, that they're all racist, that they're X, Y, and Z. The thing is that the white working class is overwhelmingly voting Republican. And so one of the things that I've seen is that there has been a game being played, which is always the case, trying to tie the reputation of racism in the white working class in the Republican Party with the economic populist message of Bernie Sanders, and a complete rejection of the economic populism that would fix the plight of poor white people, but would simultaneously fix the plight of poor black people and poor Latinos and poor Asian people, because there's more poor people in America than just the white working class. But there has been this holistic, this all around casual dismissal of economic populism, because it's seen as a remedy to a problem that only exists in the white working class, as though poverty is only something experienced by the white working class. Never mind, 28% of African Americans are living in poverty. And so there's this equivalency that's being drawn between poor white people, the white working class, and and the economic message of Bernie Sanders, particularly on the intersection of racism. And so there's always a conversation that we have to have on every given day of the damn week of whether or not the issues that African Americans face are the product of racism, or is it the product of class? Like what not only African Americans, but what we face in America. What's the biggest problem in America? Is it race or is it class? And you have an entire group, and this is a big elephant that I bit off of, but hell, I left myself 30 minutes to talk about it, and we'll talk about it, and I want to get your input. But there is something that I think people are missing all the way around. There's at least like three things I think people are missing. Number one, there are plenty of African Americans who are economically privileged, who are economically elite, that would never vote with the Republican Party because the Republican Party has fully bought into the racist narrative, the racist tropes, straight out racism, right? But they are conservative, to be sure. They are definitely conservative in their social ideologies, but they're just not able to go to the Republican Party because the Republican Party is straight out racist, right? So when we have this conversation about we're surprised at how black people could vote for Hillary Clinton, particularly from an economic perspective, I think it's short-sighted because there are plenty of well-to-do African Americans who are voting for their best interests economically with Hillary Clinton. The problem isn't that black people are voting for Hillary Clinton and they are voting against their best economic interests. It's the same exact paradigm that economically elite white liberals looking down on the white working class, that you have a lot of economically elite black people who don't care anything, or they don't care enough about black people in poverty to actually move and have an economic populism message. They don't care so much about what poverty does to their community, to their cousin's community, or to their nephew's community, or whoever they have. They don't care enough about that to actually change the economic paradigm underneath which they are benefiting. So I want people to the first thing we got to fix is this idea that every black person that's supporting Hillary Clinton is voting against their economic best interest. No, that's not true. They're making a whole lot more money than a lot of people in my audience, and a lot of people that support Bernie Sanders. And that's actually broken down by Nate Silver in the 538 blog, where he discusses the share of voters voting with Hillary Clinton that are doing well. And matter of fact, no, stop. I got to stop there. I'm not going to go there because there's this, actually, I guess I am going here. The mythology of poor white people being the ones lifting Donald Trump up. I'm pulling this directly from Nate Silver in the 538 blog, showing that Donald Trump supporters are not those poor white racists that everyone is trying to build this week's narrative around, right? That Donald Trump's supporters are actually more well-to-do than Bernie Sanders supporters and more well-to-do than Hillary Clinton supporters. But that's a free one. I have to unpack that another day. But the main point I'm trying to drive home right here is that liberals, white elite liberals, have this condescending gaze towards white working class people. To some extent, there is I can't say the word justification, but there's some understanding behind it. However, because the understanding that could be behind it is the fact that there was an entire segment of white working class people who defected from the Democratic Party somewhere around 1964, 1965 with the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, respectively. They defected from the Democratic Party to go to the Republican Party. And ever since then, the Democratic Party has been distancing themselves not only from white working class people, but from labor unions and that entire blue collar segment of the voting electorate. Right. So the Democratic Party has been completely moving further and further and further away to the point where now we're at the point where they're openly people with large followings, people with outlets, with Salon, with this huge article, basically dismissing the entirety of the white working class as people who should not be concerned, we should not be concerned with, but rather we should shame. And from the conversation of the racism that exists in the white working class, right? From that perspective, I probably could somewhat agree with it. I really don't care too much about people who are voting against their own economic best interest because of their racist bigotry and hatred. I don't really care, other than my general humanist care for humanity. You know, other than that, I don't give a damn about them. What I care about is how this particular trope is being manipulated to push back against an economic populist message that would benefit the average American. And I'm sorry if I don't care if white working class racists will benefit from economic policies that would benefit the poor black people as well. I'm sorry. I am not going to not support a democratic socialist message because that's going to benefit people who don't like black people, or it's going to benefit people who messed up the labor unions in the 60s, and it's going to benefit the white working class poor bigot trope that they're trying to push. Because that's essentially what's going on. Right now, we're dealing with the conversation of it's because of the white working class that economic populism fell apart. So then, therefore, it is an attempt to, anyone talking about economic populism is an attempt to put economic populism above racism in terms of a problem in America. And that trope has been beat to damn death in this election. When the reality of it is, I guarantee you, if you poll any African American about what the number one problem they face in America today, number two would be racism. Number one would be money, paying the rent, paying child care, having enough money to pay for medicine and food, having enough money to try to send their kids to college, even though they may not have gone to college, having enough money to actually get out of the hood. Right. So there is an economic problem that people, African Americans, face every single day. And the game that's being played is, oh, the white working class, they would benefit from economic populism, but they're racist. So we don't even need to talk about that at all. Let's talk about their racism. That is the game that's being played. That's how we're being manipulated. And that's how this entire primary season has played out. And it's at the point now where the Democratic Party is saying that they are not interested. They don't even want to talk about the economic plight of the average American anymore. They just want to talk about race, even though what we face on an everyday basis is going to be more economically challenging than it would be race. I'm sorry. Somebody, Pew Research, go and do the interviews, go and do the polls, because with 28% of African Americans living in poverty, the bottom line is we have to have an economic revolution in the United States of America. And if you don't want to, let me paint the picture a little better. And I want to get your opinion on it. You have people who are Ivy Leaguers who make 6 and 7 figures a year, who are looking down on people who probably struggle to get $30,000 a year, telling them they need to check their white privilege, creating the conversation to make it sound as though they're sound as though they're intersectional and that they're anti-racist. But all the results, the only thing that comes out of this entire conversation is the delay in the economic revolution that would benefit African Americans disproportionately. And yes, it will actually help some racist white people too. And ultimately, they want to shut down the conversation about this economic revolution because of their disdain for the white working class. Now, I don't care. Like, again, let me reiterate, there was an entire swath that left the Democratic Party, that left the labor unions in the 60s, that left because they were dissatisfied and upset with the fact that there was a tremendous amount of integration taking place. And you could see the trends with the labor unions in the 60s where there were more people aligned with unions who flipped and began voting Republican right around 1964 because of the Voting Rights Act, right? So there was a betrayal of the progressive movement of labor unions by people who did not want integration and they felt left out. But damn it, that was 1964, and they went to the Republican Party. And so why are we basing Democratic, and I'm blowing this mouth out, why are we basing Democratic economic policies based on something that happened in the 60s on a group of people who are no longer even in the Democratic Party? Why are we still sitting around? Why are we catering to this fear of white working class racists when you already believe, the polls bear it out. 62% of the white working class went for Romney in 2012. 36% went for Obama. So we're already at the point where the supermajority of white working class people went to the Republican Party and have been there. And so now we're just twiddling our thumbs, and more than twiddling our thumbs, what we're doing is we're using the language of race and intersectionality, and we're using it to suppress an economic populist message. And it has come full circle this week with the entire conversation about how Bernie Sanders won the white working class vote in West Virginia, and how because he won that, there are people who are going to allow their racism to make them unable or incapable of even supporting socialism, because you saw what happened in the 60s when they saw benefits going to African Americans. They said, oh, we don't want it. And so they flipped and went to did you see that it's so convoluted, right? So this is the argument. The argument is Bernie Sanders won the white working class in West Virginia. They must all be racist because in 1964, they were all racist. And so because in 1964, they're all racist, then today they must all be racist. And therefore, they're voting for Bernie Sanders on the basis of socialism, on democratic socialism. And they won't even support that because once they realize that democratic socialism is going to help black people, too, then all of a sudden they're going to back away from it because they're racist. Because, they're racist because in 1964, they were racist. This is actually the conversations that are going around in the Democratic establishment circles. These are the articles that are being written. This is the mindset that is being sown into the brains of the Democratic base and the Democratic elite. And so what does it actually produce? It produces an environment where anyone who talks about economic populism is automatically assumed to be some type of microaggressive racist because they're talking about economic populism instead of racism. And economic populism is going to overwhelmingly benefit, or not overwhelmingly, but economic populism is going to benefit these racist, white, poor people, as if the only poor people in America are white and racist. I probably needed a chart and a diagram to go through all that. Because when you sit and think about the absurdity of what's actually being asserted, you realize it is a twisted web of intentional propaganda for the purposes of undermining an economic revolution. Why? Because they are the economic elite now. Liberals are economically elite. The Democratic establishment are economically elite, and they have simply decided that they are more interested in they're more interested in maintaining what they have than doing anything to reshape this broken paradigm that keeps 28% of African Americans in poverty and an even greater percent of Americans, black and white, living paycheck to paycheck. They are more interested in the safety and security of what they have and what they know than they are in changing a broken system. And so this is just one of the tools, man. This is one of the tools. And so there's this entire this second narrative that's going on that they don't even need white people. You know, they don't need the white working class. They don't need them because we don't want them because they're all racist, and we don't need them because the Obama coalition is coming into the rescue. Never mind that 30% of the population right now, and actually I think it's much more than that, right? You have over 40% of the voting population right now is white working class. It's not here's the biggest takeaway for me. It's not that I'm sorry, the phone lines are open. I'm missing quite a few here. 857 I forgot my number that quick. 857-600-0518. You can join the conversation. It's not as though a damn thing that they're saying is going to fix racism. This is the biggest red herring ever perpetrated, in my opinion, on America. This idea that we should hold off on discussing economic issues because we need to fix race issues first. And it's not as though a single person who is asserting this has ever forwarded a policy that is remotely capable of changing or fixing systematic racism. Not a thing. But instead, all they've done is use racism as a means of keeping white working class people poor and African Americans poor. So we're in this poverty game together, right? We are in this we are, while they're playing this game on us, you have poor black people and poor and to be sure, I don't know what you guys make. To be sure, I'm not in poverty, right? Obviously, I'm not in poverty, right? I haven't been in poverty in a long time, right? I would love to not be spending a mortgage on childcare. If I didn't have to spend a mortgage on childcare, I'd be living it up, right? But that's my plight. But at a certain point, when you experience it firsthand, and when you see other people experience poverty, and you see what it does to their entire hopes of a successful, even a modestly successful future. You see how poverty rips that away from them. You see how poverty rips education away from them. You see how poverty rips their dreams from them and their opportunities from them. It doesn't matter how much you make now. You look back and say, we've got to fix it for somebody else. And you have a group of people who believe that. And then you have another group who has made it out. And instead of looking back and saying, we've got to do something to fix it, they look back and say, you disgusting white working class people, we should shame you into the closets and the dredges of society. Simultaneously passing programs that exacerbates their reality. Right. Yes, some of them are racist right now today. And I got a picture up of this guy who loves Donald Trump, build the wall. Right. He's the thing that comes to the mind of elites when they think of he's the person rather that comes to mind of elites when they talk about the white working class. Right. Never mind that something like the TPP is going to exacerbate the reality of people who depend on factory jobs, whatever factory jobs are even left in America. Never mind that you have people who live and work in horrid conditions that most of us would never spend a day in. Never mind that they are living in a reality that is almost like a third world country. Never mind that they're seeing their life expectancy go down. And I'm talking not only about, with the exception of the life expectancy, I'm not just talking about the white working class. I'm talking about everyone. This is not something that is problematic just for white people. This is the thing that drives me crazy, is that we act like poverty is just a white problem in America. And that's because the people, the black people that they put on television for you probably are 2 generations, if not 3 generations removed from poverty. And so they are completely forgetting about the plight of their cousins who are still living in poverty, or their second cousin twice removed, right? Who is still living in poverty. And so they look with disdain on the white working class because they're uneducated and because they're poor, but somehow they're blind to the uneducated, poor black people. This is the other thing that I want to say, and I'm gonna get out of here because I'm trying this new thing, coming to the studio with public transportation with the train, right? And I gotta catch this train. I gotta catch an Uber to a train. A lot of people, a lot of black. I want to talk to black folks real quick. If you think that these white Ivy League bourgeois white people who look down on poor white people with this disgusting gaze, which makes them hate them, right? It is a visceral hatred that is fomenting to the top of liberal elites, particularly economic elites. If you think that hatred is too far removed from your ass, then you are sadly mistaken, because it's not possible for you to have this type of condescension towards any human being and it not be just one figure. You might drop yourself down from 6 figures to 5 figures, and you'll fall into that same category of people that they look down on. And so while you feel as though you're in the club and you're with these people you think are anti-racist because they hate the white working class, you are just one wardrobe change away from them locking doors on you as you pass by. You are one wardrobe change away from them, progressive and liberal alike, standing their ground, pulling a gun on you. You are only one wardrobe change and one figure of salary away from being looked down upon by that same exact group of people. So I don't get encouraged by this new movement of this new condescension that's disdain. That's the word I'm looking for. This disdain that is being expressed towards poor white people. Not 1 second, because I know underneath this hatred for poor white people is really a hatred for poverty in the first place. It's a hatred for people who they feel are beneath them. And maybe hatred is too strong of a word. Maybe you don't like that word. Maybe that's too much, but it's really a disdain. It's the disdain for people because they will look at you. They will look at a white person and blame them and say, you just made bad decisions. You need to, and I'm not even talking about Republicans. I'm talking about Democrats. You can hear Democrats right now today blame you for not making the right decisions, blame you for not getting the right education, blame you because you didn't go and become a lawyer from an Ivy League institution, blame you for not doing all the things and telling you to pull your pants up and get your life together. These are Democrats who are blaming your economic plight completely on the decisions you made. Whereas there was a time when we as Democrats realized that this economic paradigm actually has a lot to do with how people are born and where they're born and the state that they find themselves in at the end of their life. If you're born in poverty, you're that much more likely to die in poverty. That is the result of our economic paradigm. And there was a time when Democrats understood we needed to do something about that. We needed to do something about that fundamental flaw. And it pisses me off to no end that we have allowed white liberals to co-opt the language of racism and intersectionality as a means of undermining the very message that would benefit 28% of African Americans that are still living in poverty. Congratulations, all of you who made it. Congratulations. Matter of fact, pat myself on the back. I ain't doing too bad for myself. Me and my wife, we do okay. Congratulations to everyone who made it. But do you realize, no, wrong statement. Not do you realize, but I realize that there's some of us who are still looking back and realizing we have to do something to fix this broken system so that other people can make it. And then you have the rest of them who are saying, I can't stand those poor white people. And those people are one statement away from saying, I can't stand those poor black people.